Chapter 24: Potential GDP and the Natural Unemployment Rate. Macroeconomic Approaches and Pathways. This is the overview of the three schools of thought that have sharply contrasting views about the causes of recessions and the best policies for dealing with them. Some economists continue to identify with these schools of thought and the severity of the 2018 or 2009 recession and slow recovery intensified debate and gave economists of all shades of opinion a platform from which to present their views. The three main schools of macroeconomic thought are classical macroeconomics, Keynesian macroeconomics, monetarist macroeconomist. Classical macroeconomics. According to classical macroeconomics, markets work well and deliver the best available macroeconomic performance. Aggregate fluctuations are a natural consequence of an expanding economy with rising living standards, and government intervention can only hinder the ability of the market to allocate resources efficiently. The first classical macroeconomists included Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill, all of whom worked in the 18th and 19th centuries. Modern-day classical economists include the 2004 Nobel laureate Edward C. Prescott of the University of Arizona and Finn E. Kingland of Carnegie Mellon University and the University of California at Santa Barbara. Classical macroeconomics fell into disrepute during the Great Depression of the 1930s, a time when many people believed that capitalism, the political system of private ownership, free market, and democratic political institutions could not survive and began to advocate socialism, a political system based on state ownership of capital and central economic planning. Classical macroeconomics predicted that the Great Depression would eventually end but offered no method for ending it more quickly. Keynesian macroeconomics. According to Keynesian macroeconomics, the market economy is inherently unstable and needs active government intervention to achieve full employment and sustained economic growth. One person, John Maynard Keynes, and his book The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, published in 1936, began a school of thought. Keynes' theory was that depression and high unemployment occur when households don't spend enough on consumption goods and services and businesses don't spend enough investing in new capital. That is, too little private spending is a source or cause of depression or recession. To counter the problem of too little private spending, government spending must rise. The Keynesian view picked up many followers, and by the 1950s it was the mainstream, but it lost popularity during the inflationary 1970s when it seemed even more remote from the problems of the decade. The global recession of 2008-2009 and the fear of another Great Depression revived interest in Keynesian ideas and brought a new wave of attacks on classical macroeconomics, with Nobel laureate Paul Krugman leading the charge in the columns of the New York Times. Monetarist macroeconomics. According to monetarist macroeconomics, the classical view of the world is broadly correct, but in addition to fluctuations that arise from the normal functioning of an expanding economy, fluctuations in the quantity of money generate the business cycle. A slowdown in the growth rate of money brings recession, and a large decrease in the quantity of money brought the Great Depression. Milton Friedman, intellectual leader of the Chicago School of Economics during the 1960s and 1970s, was the most prominent monetarist. The view that monetary contractions are the sole source of recessions and depressions is held by few economists today. But the view that quantity of money plays a role in economic fluctuations is accepted by all economists and is part of today's consensus. Each of the earlier schools provides insight and ingredients that survive in today's consensus. Classical macroeconomics provides the story of the economy at or close to full employment, but the classical approach doesn't explain how the economy performs in the face of a major slump in spending. Keynesian macroeconomics takes up the story in a recession or depression. When spending is cut and the demand for most goods and services and the demand for labor all decrease, prices and wage rate don't fall but the quantity of goods and services sold and quantity of labor employed do fall, and the economy goes into recession. In a recession, an increase in spending by governments or a tax cut that leaves people with more of their earning to spend can help to restore full employment. Monetarist macroeconomics elaborates the Keynesian story by emphasizing that a contraction in the quantity of money brings higher interest rates and borrowing cost, which are a major source of cuts in spending that brings recession. Increasing the quantity of money and lowering the interest rate in a recession can help to restore full employment. And keeping the quantity of money growing steadily in line with the expansion of the economy's production possibilities can help to keep inflation in check and can also help to moderate the severity of the recession.